Hello, friends, and welcome. I hope that you are having a spectacular day today. We're having sunshine again here in Ohio. I don't know how we're getting so blessed. It's a little crazy, so I haven't been on here as much. But let's go ahead and do as is our custom and open the Word of God. Lord, please bless the hearing of your word. We have the very end of Proverbs, chapter 31, starting with verse 18. She sees that her trading is profitable and her lamp does not go out at night. She opens her arms to the poor and extends her hands to the needy. When it snows, she has no fear for her household, for all of them are clothed in scarlet. She is clothed with strength and dignity. She can laugh at the days to come. She speaks with wisdom, and faithful instruction is on her tongue. She watches over the affairs of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. Charm is deceptive and beauty is fleeting, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Give her the reward she has earned, and let her works bring her praise to the city gate. So I think that is very accurate in terms of the portrayal of the woman that we see in Revelation 12. Her lot for the coming days is going to be one of preparedness and faith so that she can minister to others. It's going to be a hard time. We all know that. But God is always faithful. He's always looking out for his people. Now, let's go ahead. We are going to look at the book of Daniel today. And in particular, we're going to speak about the abomination that causes desolation. We have been speaking about the war in the heavens with Michael and how the word for heavens can be interpreted as skies. And we see all these crazy things happening in different parts of the world. We've seen them here in the United States. We've had trees knocked down. It was even worse south of us in Kentucky. That may very well continue. I know I've been praying, and know a lot of people have been praying. And these storms that people have been predicting, they really haven't done anything. So please, everyone, remember that prayers work. I was reminded that earlier in the year, we had a similar situation, only worse, in Texas. Around the time that the second horseman was being called out, we were actually in the aftermath of many storms that had happened in Texas, bringing about what appeared to be fake snow that could even burn like it was injected with petroleum or something. It was quite bizarre. But again, strange things going on in the heavens, and we are very familiar and acquainted with the concept of weather weapons. So be in prayer over all of these things. But the thing is that when we look at the book of Daniel, which also talks about the archangel Michael going into war in the heavens, we see there is a context there with relation to the abomination that makes desolate. So we are coming into the desolation part, but where's the abomination? Let's talk about that. All right. So let's go ahead and look at the full chapter. We're going to look at chapters 11 and 12 of the book of Daniel. And I'm going to start up here at the top, just in case anybody wanted to look through these verses with a little more context. I like to just put them out there so people can pause and then take a look through it. Again, we're going to start with verse 31. And arms shall stand on his part, and they shall pollute the sanctuary of strength, and shall take away the daily sacrifice, and they shall place the abomination that maketh desolate. Okay, so that's where we're going to focus. And again, I can go through to the end of the chapter just for those who do want that additional context. And now let's break this verse down. And we will look at it in the stars as well with the Greek interpretation in Strong's Concordance. So, an arm shall stand on his part. So the previous verse was talking about a figure, kind of like an Antichrist figure. I wouldn't say the Antichrist, but that's something that I can study more. Obviously, we can all study more about these things. So they shall pollute the sanctuary of strength and shall take away the daily sacrifice. All right. So what's the sanctuary of strength? Well, the temple. Since Jesus died on the cross, the temple is now our bodies. The curtain that separated the holies from the Holy of Holies from the regular person, that was separated. And we have direct access to God through Jesus Christ. And our bodies are now his temple. So anything that happened within the last few years to cause a disruption in that temple, that would be a prime candidate for being an abomination that is bringing about the oncoming desolation. Let's continue. And shall take away the daily sacrifice. Well, for that, we look at 2020 Passover when all of the churches were closed. That was a governmental decision. It wasn't the decision of necessarily the people. We want to have that communion corporately with our Father and fellow believers. So to stop that without going to the Lord in prayer, big abomination, big abomination. Of course, churches have since resumed, but what we're going to see is some of the aftermath. We know that God takes his time in judging a lot of times. So those are a couple of things that we are looking at in terms of what would cause the upcoming desolation. Now, when we look at the mark of the beast, it's different. It's different. And we see from, I'm not going to jump over there, but from Revelation 13, it's going to be a mark on the hand. It's going to be a mark on the forehead. It's going to be required to make purchases. There will be a knowledgeable oath associated with it. So while I, hail my brothers and sisters who have been drawing attention to this, injection that has been causing a lot of tragedies around us, we've got to put it in that proper context. We also see from Revelation 13 that the Antichrist figure is on the scene when the mark of the beast also transpires. So we've got to look at these things scripturally. There is chronology. There is an order to how all of these come into play. Now, as we have been studying Michael and the war in the heavens, let's go ahead and look at the next chapter. Because, I believe that it's chapter 12. Chapter 11 does not make reference of Michael. But here we go, verse 1 of chapter 12. And at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince, which standeth for the children of thy people. And there shall be a time of trouble, such as never was since there was a nation, even to the same time. And at that time thy people shall be delivered, every one that shall be found written in the book. All right, so let's go ahead. Verse 2, continuing. And many of them that sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, and some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt. And they that be wise shall shine as the brightness of the firmament. And they that turn many to righteousness as the stars forever and ever. All right, and then in the next verse, God is telling Daniel to shut these things up. Go thy way, Daniel. But let's take a look over here at the end of the chapter. Verse 10, many shall be purified. Okay, they maybe had defiled their garments. They will be purified and made white and tried. But the wicked shall do wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand, but the wise shall understand. Okay? Just because somebody calls themselves a Christian, just because they are the pastor of a church or a mega church, doesn't mean that they are going to fall in line with God's purposes of goodness. The Antichrist is going to make it very appealing to continue on with the beast system, just like many of them are doing now. They're asking the government for money. Well, that's not God's way. That's not God's way. And with that money comes all sorts of obligations. And we saw that begin to happen with George Bush II, who, as part of his war on terror, opened up all these grants to the churches. And ever since then, the church has been, in large part, under the influence of these government entities and the entities that are over them. Verse 11, and from the time that the daily sacrifice shall be taken away, and the abomination that maketh desolate set up, there shall be 1,290 days. Blessed is he that waiteth and cometh to the 1,335 days. But go thou thy way till the end be, for thou shalt rest and stand in thy lot at the end of the days. Now, let's go ahead. We're going to make this bigger and take a look at this guy over here. Okay, the last 7 years. So looking at the Revelation 12 sign, Revelation 12, we see that took place, Feast of Trumpets, 2017. The first seal was opened when the sun went into conjunction with the white planet Jupiter. We see that in Revelation 1:16. He had in his right hand 7 stars. These things are happening in the heavens. And out of his mouth went a sharp two-edged sword, and his countenance was as the sun shineth in his strength. Continuing, the abomination that makes desolate, Daniel 12, Passover 2021. And this is, again, when the churches were shut down. Well, actually, the churches shut down in 2020. And then in 2021, we had the emergency FDA approval of the injection. So it was the one and then the other, just as it's listed in Daniel 11, and then as 12 as well. Later on in the summer, we had the Canary Island events with La Palma. That is still ongoing. And what does a canary do? Well, the canary is what warned miners of any possible gases when they were down doing their work. If the canary stopped singing and died, the miners knew they needed to get out right away. And then with the second seal, we see Mars going into conjunction with the sun. Over here, Mars was in Taurus. He was called out by the living creature with the face of an ox. And let's go ahead and do a quick refresher on what that means. Here we have Revelation 4 that talks about the 4 beasts with eyes in the front and behind them. Those eyes are stars. And these beasts are the constellations Leo with the face of a lion, Taurus with the face of a bull, Aquarius, the face of a man, and Aquila, the face of an eagle. We see that the throne is in heaven. There is an emerald rainbow, which is the aurora borealis that surrounds the throne of God. 24 elders. One interpretation of that are the 24 time segments by which we see our stars, the sea of crystal sparkling glass being space. And over here, we have the white horseman, the white king planet, Jupiter, the red horseman, Mars, the black horseman, Mercury, Death, and Hades. And I'll let you guys look over those. If you have any questions, please post them in the comments. So we have the calling out, and then we have the conjunction of the sun. First, with the white horseman, the calling out was the face of an eagle, Aquila. Jupiter entered Aquila in November of 2019. Things started happening with the worldwide pandemic. And then in December, when the sun entered the scene and went in conjunction with Jupiter, we saw the actual release, and it was in the news, and we became aware. Taurus was called out by the living creature with the face of a bull, or excuse me, Mars was called out by the living creature with the face of the bull Taurus during Passover of this year. That's when we saw the skirmish in Palestine. And then it went into conjunction with the sun in September 2021. And this is, when supposedly China said that they were going to attack Taiwan on the 25th, on the day that we called it. And then for some reason, didn't happen. Now they're saying December 25th. And again, prayers are really having an impact here. The black horse, we saw Leo called Mercury out end of July, beginning of August 2021. And that is when we saw the housing market start to kind of quiver a little bit out there in China. And it looks like now it's just crumbling. It went into conjunction with the sun in November, has the scales with the third horseman. The second horseman, I'll back up, had the dagger or the great sword, and that's when Mars went into conjunction with the sun, and then Jupiter went into conjunction with the sun in Sagittarius, the constellation with a bow and a crown down here. So when Mercury, the third horseman, went into conjunction with the sun, we saw the stock market start to plunge here in the U.S., and then with the pale horseman, we saw those storms as Jupiter entered Aquarius, the living creature with the face of a man. And there was potentially up to 300 people. The numbers are still coming in terms of the death toll for that. But we were looking for there to be a significant event. Mid-December 2021. And then it's going to go into conjunction with the sun, February 2022. That's going to be a hard day. Death and Hades will start to come into their full ride then. Continuing on. So we've seen these things all taking place up to this point. We're looking for a rapture event in Aquila with the sun in that constellation or below it, as we see in Revelation 12 with the woman being carried away with the two wings of the great eagle, Aquila. And we've seen many signs in the stars. I'm not going to go into a whole lot of that. Leonard on the 16th crossed the ecliptic line, and we will go ahead and take a look at what all of this means and set some of our filters here. And this is review for a lot of people, and it's fine if you need to kind of fast forward through some of these things or put it at a higher speed. We have Leonard, and then I wanted to get into this just a little more clearly with this video. It's going right into the microscope here, which could be alluding to the biological, we'll say, warfare that we've got going on here. So lots of things happening. There was an article that was posted, I think it was called YouGov, survey of the most important people. And let me get an image here. Oh, look at that. Our most important people. Let's open this in a new tab. Oh, this was 2019. It's different for this year. But basically, they've got Barack Obama as the most important person for men and Michelle Obama as the most important person for women. Oh, here it is. So, I mean, it's pretty blatant. It's pretty out there. Oh, that was last year. So we're getting closer anyway. But again, this was YouGov, and they have these surveys out there. All right, continuing on. So basically, all of this to say that when we were looking at Daniel, let's get Daniel back up here, and we saw the numbers 1,290 days, and then we had the numbers 1,335 days. That fits perfectly in with our timeline. I went ahead and I entered a new column here for the Abomination of Desolation. This is going to be 1,290 days. Let's see. One moment. Until the seventh trumpet, the beginning of the bowls, and then we've got the 1335 that will take us to the end of October. And that's going to be Armageddon. So this timeline is working out very, very well. Again, as you know, we just need to look at the scriptures. We need to look at the Bible to understand who the main players are, to understand the judgments. So let's go ahead. I've got Daniel open over here. We're going to look at the abomination that causes desolation. 8251. Okay, so when we look up the word abomination, 8251 in the small body database put out by NASA, we see this asteroid, Isogai. I don't know if that's how it's pronounced, but it's interesting. That's right next to the moon right now. So again, this is Abomination. It's in Leo. So the Lion of Judah. Okay, it's not anywhere near the sun or the wings of the great eagle. That in and of itself is telling me, you know, that it's the abomination is away from us. And that's not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing. However, let's take a look at the word desolation. All right, so for desolation, we've got to go to 8074. That's going to take us over here to Slade. All right, Pisces. This is the church constellation here, when Jesus said that he would make us to be fishers of men. Some, with the context of the Old Testament, have looked at this as the northern and southern kingdoms of Israel. Jews and Gentiles. I mean, there's different ways to look at this. But even though the abomination is not here, God has cleansed us. He's made us clean. We do have that desolation that is upon us. Now, we're talking about Passover. So let's go ahead and take a look at last year Passover. So that was toward the end of March, I believe. Let me double check. All right, so beginning of April. Let's make our adjustments there. Beginning of April. All right, and so we were looking for Slade. All right, so right in Sagittarius, the first horseman. And how about 2021? Again, this is desolation. And Passover, I think this time was actually at the end of March. So let's take a look. Let's get it an exact date. All right, March 27th. Was when it began. Okay. Ooh, right in the water of Aquarius. Okay. And let's see, the name of the other one that we were looking at was Isogai. And whoa, look at that, right in conjunction with the sun. And this is the word for abomination. So no surprise here that this is what happened. And again, we're seeing this in the signs in the heavens, the evidence that the abomination that makes desolate, that's going to bring on this oncoming desolation, has happened. And in these times that we are stating, with Passover 2021, let's look at 2020. And that was April. I believe April. Let's take a look. 2020, April 8th. So April 8th. Okay. No surprise here. Sagittarius again. And let's take a look at Slade. It was Slade that we were looking at before. Where was asteroid Slade? Whoa, they're right next to each other. Okay, so abomination that causes desolation. I think that this is a win here, right in the area of the bow and the crown with the first horseman. Okay, friends. As you can see, this does take a lot of work, but let's continue. Let's continue on. Now, if we look at this guidebook that I've put out, I'm going to jump down to the commentary section at the bottom and look at the abomination, I say past tense, that caused desolation. When I was doing my initial research, I was focused on this word temple. There is a asteroid temple that was named after a man whose last name happened to be Temple. So I thought, well, that's worthy of some research. But then I also looked at the Greek and I believe the Hebrew terms for temple as well. If you want to look at this further, basically I'm saying that these asteroids within a 24-hour period went into conjunction with the moon, or maybe it was over the period of 3 days of Passover. So very, very interesting things indeed. I don't have time. This video would be 2 hours long if I went over everything that I want to go over. And then here is the next portion. In fact, I can probably try to make this a little bigger for those of you at home. So a lot of work goes into this, as you can see. If you really want to dive into that research, just check out this document. It's free. It's online. I'll have it linked below. So friends, I hope that this video has challenged you and encouraged you to look some of these signs up in the heavens. The tools are all right there in front of us. And as you can see, there's a lot of work. I mean, there is so much information out there. I've looked up, the dragon. I've looked up sword. And in fact, I was about to close because I am very tired. Let me tell you, work has been very stressful. But this is another thing that I just discovered. So when we look at Revelation 12 in the Greek, I'm going to do a search on the word sword. Or actually, I should go to Revelation 6. One moment. As you can see, I am tired. So there are two different words used for sword. We've got the sword or the dagger that was given to the second horseman, but there's also the sword referenced with the fourth horseman, because the fourth horseman will be able to kill by famine, by sword, by pestilence, and by death, just a generic word, death, like anything else. So we've got Machera for the second horseman, 3162, but we've got Ramphia with 4501 for the sword that the fourth horseman, Death and Hades, will be able to kill with. So we're going to look at the first sword, 3162. We put that in with our jet propulsion database. What was that again? 3162. We will see nostalgia. And every now and then, I will look at this Speakman ID. This is the asteroids, But if we want to look at the comets, we will put the number 1 instead of the number 2. So, Lovejoy, I'm not sure about that. But again, with this version that I have, the desktop of Stellarium, I can't go in to look at these comets. And I think some of them are so obscure that a lot of times I can't even find them with the mobile Stellarium. But as you can tell, there's so much work that can be done. But going back to nostalgia, if we, again, this is the sword of the second horseman. And if we bring this to today, we see it is right in here. In fact, it's right next to Mars, our second horseman. Right there. They are together. And just as Mars was entering conflict, Scorpio. So there's so much going on right now. We are under the wings of the great eagle Aquila. We've got that comet. It's going by in this area. Let me zoom in a little bit. In this area here, right with the tail feathers, the comet that we looked up, and it referred to two of the mighty men of King David. One, Uriah, the most famous, or one of the most famous, Uriah from the Greek, even though he's Hebrew, it was the Greek, made a reference to Uriah. And then, hey, bingo, the other was the Kerethites, who were a foreign body group of David's mighty men, part of his bodyguard. The mighty men, I think that there was a group of 3, and then there was a group of 30. But these were Gentiles who were loyal. Even though they weren't born into that faith, they were loyal to that king. So this comet just happens to be in Aquila, the great eagle. So there are all sorts of signs going on in the heavens. Please ask questions. If you have any, let's go ahead and close with some scripture, and please do be encouraged. I mean, we are sitting right on the edge, right where we need to be. The signs, they are happening all around us, from, the rapture to the Antichrist to the sealed judgments. I mean, please, please, please go to the Word. Go to the Word as your first and foremost sign of how these things play out. And again, I'm going to put this timeline, and we've got the scriptures here. It's all there right in front of us. All right. So let me bring that down. I don't know how that got up there. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and open, and the Lord pointed me right to Jeremiah chapter 1. Listen, people, this is for you. Now, I have put my words in your mouth. See, today I appoint you over nations and kingdoms, to uproot and tear down, to destroy and overthrow, to build and to plant. Okay, the kings and the priests. This is the rapture. The first fruits. Even if you miss the rapture, if you are martyred for your faith, you're going to, 1, be with Jesus, and 2, escape the great wrath of God. Stand for your faith. Jumping down to verse 16, I will pronounce my judgments on my people because of their wickedness in forsaking me, and letting their churches be shut down, and burning incense to other gods, and in worshiping what their hands have made, their phones, their quest for health and beauty. 17, get yourself ready. Stand up and say to them whatever I command you. Okay, we're coming into our jobs now. We, as the first fruits, we are going to get busy as soon as that rapture happens. Do not be terrified by them. Oh, don't I know this verse? Or I will terrify you before them. Today I have made you a fortified city, an iron pillar, and a bronze wall to stand against the whole land, against the kings of Judah, its officials, its priests, and the people of the land. They will fight against you, but will not overcome you. Just like Absalom, he pursued his father, King David, and his household. The Kerethites, they warded them off. They helped David escape. Okay? Just like Sennacherib's field man, tried to intimidate Hezekiah, as Hezekiah stood firm. We must stand firm. We cannot be afraid. For I am with you and will rescue you, declares the Lord. Jumping down to chapter 2, verse 3, Israel was holy to the Lord, the first fruits of his harvest. All who devoured her were held guilty. Disaster overtook them, declares the Lord. May the Lord add a blessing to the hearing of his word. Amen.